Hi there, knife people, hello lady and gentlemen. Tonight I'm going to talk about a premium American-made knife that is reasonably priced, believe it or not. But first, cringeworthy moment number one. This is the premium knife stuck in a tree stump being batoned by an oak branch into the said tree. A frame lock that takes 9 full-strength strikes without unlocking must be some kind of record. How do you like those apples? Finding a reasonably priced knife that is basic, solid, and good looking and has good ergos is hard. So tonight I'm presenting to you my recent find, Southern Grind Penguin. And I'll get into the name in a little bit. But let's start in the middle. If you would like to read the specs, they're on the back of this sheet. The 3.5-inch blade is made out of very premium S90V steel, which is at awesome 64 to 65 Rockwell. And the frame is 6AL4V titanium. And the pivot hardware is custom machined. By the way, that titanium is the most premium you can obtain in the United States. We'll look closely at the bearings in a second. Right now I wanted to take a look at the stop pin. It is a loose fit pin with a shoulder. It's a shoulder pin, so the stress is absorbed by the shoulder, not by the knob that sits in the handle. For now, let's pull the sandwich apart and finally take a look at these bearings. They're nylon steel ball, 1/2-inch OD, 1/4-inch ID bearings. Not sure the country of origin, they could be US made. The thickness is 63 thousandths of an inch. And we'll circle back to that later because if you watch my channel, you know I'm not a big fan of bearings. I'll get into reasons why in a little bit. For now, let's take a look at the hardware. There's 6 screws and a pivot hardware that hold it together. That's it. Pretty simple, straightforward design. But as they say, the demons are in the details, so let's look at the details. Blade being a soul of any knife, let's take a look at it first. This knife was over $300, and at this price, you expect certain things. For example, a very nicely chamfered thumb hole and a crowned or chamfered spine. A flat saber grind 3/4 of the way up the blade with a very robust tip. A sure sign of hand-ground primary bevel is the thinning toward the tip, and yet the tip remains robust. The edge itself was a little bit on the rough side, toothy, and I already resharpened it. My biggest gripe is the location of the plunge grind, a little bit too close to the cutting edge, but immediately I am distracted by a beautifully machined groove for the detent bolt. It ensures a smooth closing action of the knife. I own a couple of knives that are 3 times the price and they don't even have this premium feature. The spacers are 1/4-inch on the shoulder with a 3/16 threaded boss that accommodates T6 screws. The rearmost spacer leaves plenty of room to run a linear Chris Reeves knife style. Before we circle back to the bearings, here's a cringe moment number 2. Take a look. So in this demonstration, I can hardly call it a test because I'm not collecting any data. So in this demonstration, I stab the knife as hard as I can in a dead oak tree 25 times. The blades that survive pass the test. Not every blade survived. I destroyed 13 of them to date. Why do I do that? To prove to myself and the world that a blade is EDC worthy or not. Because if it's not heat treated properly, the tip will either break off or bend. There are plenty of beautiful knives on the market right now, but by far not every one of them is capable of taking serious punishment. Some of them are just made to look good, maybe feel good, but I personally think that any knife has a potential of being a survival tool that's the only tool in your pocket when you need it. And so it needs to be able to withstand this kind of punishment. If you disagree, write me a comment. Let's have a discussion. If you agree, subscribe. Anyway, if you want to see more of these tests, I have a playlist called Torch Tests on my channel. Just click on my icon and here's the playlist. And now I'm going to talk a little bit about the ball bearings. And here's why I don't like ball bearings. They leave these grooves on the softer metals like titanium. And there are very few metals as hard as the ball bearings. And this titanium is extremely well heat treated. On the inside, you can still see a little bit coloration from annealing. And the outside is sandblasted and has this nice silky finish, yet it's grippy. Here's another look at what the bearings do to the frame. So if you use your knife hard, then over time, these grooves will become deeper and you will end up constantly tuning your knife. Not constantly, but frequently. Sometimes the blade becomes kind of jerky on closing because the balls on the bearing made indentations in that recess. Especially if you exert twisting moment or lateral loads, like prying, to the handle, like this. Cringe moment number 3. In this test, I placed the blade into a crack on the tree stump, and now I'm twisting it left to right, right to left, to see how durable it is. Do you use your knives hard? If you do, and you don't like the bearings, here's the fix. Take a look. I went on McMaster Car website. It's a catalog that sells all kinds of parts and tools, and searched on washers. And there's like a search tool that lets you select the outside diameter, inside diameter, thickness, material, etc. So I selected these self-lubricating, oil-impregnated brass washers that are 64 thousandths thick and have a matching to the bearings diameters, 1/2 inch OD, 1/4 inch ID. The thickness is critical. You don't want to go thinner or thicker by more than a couple of thousandths of an inch as compared to the bearings. And here, all the dimensions, they're a perfect match, as you can see. Let me repeat myself. The thickness of this washer has to match the diameter of the bearing bowl, the bowl diameter. And the washers are a perfect fit. As you can see, perfect. Cannot be any better. Not too tight, not loose, perfect. All right, let's reassemble the sandwich and see what happens. Let's talk about the name of the knife, the Penguin. Take a look at the logo. It's a penguin ready to plunge, looking down from the iceberg's edge into the shark and seal infested waters. Just imagine you marching through roughest terrain on Earth in the coldest place on Earth to the edge of the water so you can catch some fish and take it home to your lady so that you can feed her while she is laying an egg. That's what penguins do. And now imagine hundreds of penguins standing by the water's edge, peering down, and nobody is brave enough to jump in first until one of them does. Because there are sharks in that water. So it takes a very brave bird indeed to be the first one off that iceberg into those waters, which is very similar to what an American knife maker goes through, because those waters are also infested with, Chinese companies that try to steal your ideas, undercut your prices, competitive material procurement, shortage of labor, not to mention sensation-hungry YouTube influencers. So when Zach Brown started Southern Grind, he really took a plunge, much like a first penguin off the cliff. By the way, check out this feature. Look at the triangular shape stop plate on the end of this lock bar. It's the first time I've seen it on any knife, and I can't even figure out how it's attached. Let me know in the comments if you know how it's done. This knife comes together really easy. No tricks, just pretty straightforward assembly. Just put everything in place and drop in the back of the frame. done. The pivot screw has very fine, non-standard, I think, very fine pitched threads, which enables you to adjust the tension at the pivot without using the Loctite. In general, finer threads are used in situations where vibration may cause backing out of the screw. They're less likely to back out. I always hold my breath tightening T6 screws because the socket heads are so easy to strip. You have to exercise a lot of caution, and the torque required is minimal. It's like 8 inch-pounds, which is almost nothing. Clearly, the pivot needs a little bit adjustment, but I am happy that this beautiful sound the knife makes did not disappear after I removed the bearings and put washers in their place. That's a really pleasant sound. The blade recentered, it's nice and tight, there's no play in any direction, and the knife is functioning properly. I'm going to store the bearings with the box. I always keep boxes for all my premium knives. And now it's time to give it a good old paper towel roll test. And to achieve this level of sharpness, I used my Worksharp Professional Precision Adjust tool, which I implemented slight mods on. I have a video about putting bushings into this part, a media carrier, and a couple tightening techniques called zip ties. So now it gives me this beautiful edge, absolutely flat. This is not a mirror polish. I don't necessarily like mirror polish. It's just a very high finish. Let's compare it to what it looked like in this area before I sharpened it. So I see a lot of knife reviewers doing a paper towel test like this on the roll. In my book, that is not as sharp. It does not show how sharp the knife can be. If you hold it unsupported without any tension on the paper, this is the sharpness test. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe.